I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, the Yuwad and Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nations, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who may be watching today's episode.
I think out of desperation, curiosity, I was a seeker. I felt broken and I wanted to fix me.
There's so many factors and elements that go into, why someone is in the position that they are.
It's like the cloud lifts and they just look so much lighter at the end of it. And it's a very beautiful thing to witness. I think once you reconnect someone to their power, there's just so much potential and possibility, and that's when the magic can happen.
Welcome to Shit's Fucked, the podcast that gets real about addiction, mental health, and everything in between. I'm Paris, and I spent 17 years battling the bottle, 10 years hooked on meth, and I also did a stint in the escorting world, which nearly cost me everything, including my life. I was lost, disconnected, and completely unrecognizable from who I once was. With both lived and professional experience, including qualifications in alcohol and other drugs, I'm here to share what I've learned along the way. Shit's Fucked isn't about offering the right way to recover. It's about showing that recovery is actually very personal. Every journey is unique, and this podcast brings you stories, insights, and practical tools to help you find what works for you. Now, just a disclaimer, we dive into some tough topics here, including addiction, all forms of abuse, trauma, mental illness, suicide, self-harm, and the realities of life in recovery. These discussions can be intense, so please take care while listening and just make sure you're in the right headspace too. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast. Your support actually helps us more than you know, and it's one of the best ways to keep these conversations going. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome, Jackie Durnin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Paris.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I've actually been really, really excited to have this conversation with you. I mean, you've been getting up to some pretty cool shit, and I can't wait to dive into it further. You're coming in from, is it South Adelaide? No, South Australia.
Yeah,
that's what I meant to say. Sunshine Coast.
But it's not very sunny today. It's actually quite rainy, so it should be called the rainy coast today. But Sunshine
rainy coast today. Oh dear. So for the people that have, joined in on our conversation and listening to us talk today, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and a little bit about what you're working on at the moment?
Sure. So my name is Jackie Durnin. I am the founder of Hinterland Health Retreat. This all came about, I suppose, because over the last, for many years, I've been doing a lot of healing on myself. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse in my childhood, and I was on a healing journey, trying lots of different therapies over the years, which resulted in me becoming an EFT practitioner and counselor. And I've worked at health retreats. I've volunteered at rehabilitation in Hawaii, and throughout all of that, I've run my own mini health retreats, and I always felt I would set up my own health retreat. And that came to fruition, or is coming to fruition as we speak, because we're opening our doors on the 25th of November this year, 2024.
So exciting.
Very exciting. And I wanted to create a safe space for people to come and heal from their traumas. And I wanted to do it differently because I noticed that, out there, people might just focus on the mind. Like a lot of people might just go to talk therapy, or retreats might use just a lot of talk therapy. And I wanted to make sure I'm incorporating mind, body, and spirit, because I think that's really important. So the retreat has that combination of modalities, as well as making sure that we're incorporating food as medicine, because food is so important, and making sure that we're eating the right food that suits our genetic makeup, which will ultimately support us. So we'll be doing genetic testing to understand what foods you should be eating, or is there any insight we can get from your genetics on what food would support you on the journey. Also doing blood testing to see is there anything we can do to support your body through our on-site IV clinic. So can we boost your, let's say, vitamin Bs or Ds? Is there anything that we can do to support you with supplementation and IVs? And then we also are bringing over a range of neurotechnology from the US. So this range of neurotechnology is not available anywhere else in the world. So it's a world first rehabilitation. And the reason I incorporated this into the program is because we live in such a technological age. And I thought surely there has to be technology out there that can help people on the process to healing. So a lot of the technology that we're incorporating is technology to, for example, like relax your nervous system or stimulate your vagus nerve, which is very good for depression and anxiety, quieten the mind. So if we can get you out of fight or flight and relax your nervous system, we can quieten the mind. It's a much easier job then to actually start processing your trauma. And if we can support you creating a new neural pathway, so there's certain neural pathways you've been using in the lead up to coming to the retreat, which would be old patterns of behavior and old belief systems that are not serving you anymore. So we want to be creating new neural pathways, new modes of behaving. And this technology supports us with that and helps us with the rebuild of new neural pathways, as well as a lot of therapy. So it's a 28-day tailored program. There's only 6 people on site at a time. So we want to dedicate our time to these individuals. And the goal is that we never have to see them again. I don't want a revolving door policy. I don't want people to have to come back next year and the year after. I want to give a comprehensive aftercare program so that they have the tools that they need to ride the waves of life and resiliently. And if they need a top-up session, we're there. But ultimately that 28 days will be like years and years of therapy, and just clear out as much shit as they possibly can in that time. It would be basically like a rebirth. It would be a chance for them to create a new version of themselves, reconnect them to their power. And I think once you reconnect someone to their power, there's just so much potential and possibility. And that's when the magic can happen.
Thank you so much for sharing. This all sounds so fucking exciting because, as you know, like we really lack stuff like this here. I know particularly in Australia. And I love seeing more holistic approaches. And, instead of looking at the one problem and focusing on that, you're looking at all key areas. You're looking at the bigger picture. There's so many factors and elements that go into, why someone is in the position that they are. And too often do I see in whether it's mental health services or AOD or any kind of health service in particular, they focus on the one problem and they don't look at anything else. And it's such a breath of fresh air to hear that you're going in such depth as well, to the point of even looking at your DNA and your genetics and really factoring in nutrition as well. Like, that is incredible. I can't wait for this to open. This is so exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's all in there because of my own journey. Part of my journey was, as well as dealing with sexual abuse, I was also on a journey of IVF because I was trying to get pregnant for a really long time. Part of that process was understanding that I really needed to reconnect with my inner child, and I really needed to get to a point of actually being in my body, because I had been out of my body for such a long time because I had to do that to survive. And part of that IVF journey was looking at food and looking at what could I do to support this very medical system, I suppose, because I was injecting myself and I wanted to find ways that I could support me. And I found during that process, I realized that I was quite deficient in certain nutrients that happened to be linked to
Mm.
miscarrying. And it was like, oh, well, I remember saying it to a doctor, an IVF doctor. Oh, my GP has found out that I'm actually really deficient in vitamin B and zinc, and there was a few of them, and they were just like, it's irrelevant. And I was like, really?
Really?
I was like, well, they were very much of the opinion, if you're injecting and you're doing what we're saying you need to do, you'll be fine. But I was like,
Like that's it. Mm.
I just think that's crap. Like, surely if I'm getting my body into the optimum a state as I can, and it's energized and it's, at the right levels, that can only help the
Of
process.
course. I
And
can't
the
believe they
thing
would
is,
say it's irrelevant.
yeah, I think it was just their opinion was, we just use the inject yourself and it'll happen. Not that
Yes,
it'll
stick
happen,
with
but
the
you know what I mean?
program. Yeah, stick with
Yeah.
the program. Don't ask any questions.
Yeah, and I think that's so not, and we really don't understand. I don't think, like, food is not something that people really consider can be very powerful on your healing journey. And
Yeah, that's a tough one.
they say the way, there's that statement, the way to your heart is through your stomach. But I think there's also this recent thought coming out that depression stems from the gut. So
Mm.
if you can heal the gut and work on the gut, and so some of the technology we have is red light therapy for the gut, as well as make sure that we're feeding foods that are nourishing, whole foods, that can only help, surely, the journey,
Oh,
rather than having you on a sugar roller coaster.
absolutely. Yeah, I've even been down this rabbit hole myself because, with the own my own mental health challenges that I've experienced, and I've just had a lot of gut health problems. So I've really looked into that, and there is so much study that backs that. Like, there's the microbiomes within our gut that, that we need to be getting the right ones for us genetically. And I think there was like a doco I was watching a couple of weeks ago about how people in like city metro kind of areas aren't actually getting the right microbiomes for their body, but people in like rural areas, or like even like third world countries, are getting the right microbiomes into their gut. And you find that it's the city populations that are experiencing higher amounts of mental health disorders and addiction. And it's just, you can't help but think, like, there's definitely a link. I mean, obviously there's other factors at play too, but
Yeah,
it has been proven that, the stomach is like a second brain. It really does make such an influence on our moods and our overall well-being.
totally. And I think that also, that you were talking about rural setting, I think that connection to nature, that's part of, why we've picked where our retreat is. Like, we've got 30 acres in the Sunshine Coast hinterland, and it's
Beautiful.
really about allowing these people to reconnect with themselves and reconnect in nature, because we live in such a fast society. We're usually plugged into some device. So to be able to unplug and just give ourselves the time and the space to actually connect, go within, and address what's going on for us instead of masking it.
And there's even been studies, like, this is why I now incorporate putting my bare foot, like, or bare feet, I should say, on the ground outside every morning, because it's the earth electrons, like, coming through your body. Like, it really is so healing, like, on a cellular level. And the fact that, we often wear shoes, we're never really outside, like, we are so disconnected. So of course we're seeing these imbalances. We're completely out of whack with where we should probably be.
Yeah, totally agree. So I think this 28 days is a real opportunity to create a new habit of being this new version of yourself, and
Yeah.
letting go of all the old behaviors, belief systems that just aren't serving you.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Well, I actually want to kind of take us back to what you were first talking about, in regards to your work in Hawaii. So please, like, forgive me if I say this wrong. The Habilitat, is it Habilitat or
Habilitat.
Habilitat?
Habilitat.
Habilitat, damn it.
That's all
Okay.
good.
The Habilitat program in Hawaii. Can you tell us a little bit about what work you did there? I understand that it is addiction recovery, and what lessons did you take from that experience?
So, yes, it's a 3-year addiction program. It's one of the world's leading programs. They 85% of their clients are transferred from the prison system for drug related offenses. And they have about, I think at the time it was like 67 or 68% success rate. And people who go through that program are people on the island of Hawaii really like to hire people who are graduates of that program because they have an amazing work ethos. And this opportunity came up for me they were looking for EFT, emotional freedom technique practitioners, to go over there, and they wanted to work on their addicted feelings. So what they found was even after 3 years of being in a program, people could close their eyes, or they could just sit there and they could recreate that addicted feeling like that, like yesterday. So they were like, if we could get rid of that addicted feeling, it would make such a difference to these people. And it would also make such a difference to our success rate because, like, that's probably the most challenging thing. So I got to go for 2 weeks and I did it on 2 separate occasions. And in that period of time, the first time I went there, I had an extensive crash course in what all the drugs were, what are their names, what are their nicknames. We were all given fake drug kits. And then we would go in for a 2-hour session to work on their addicted feeling. That was the main thing we needed to work on. And it was just a profound experience for me. At the time, I was working at a large corporate doing a digital project management. And this opportunity came up, and I took 2 weeks off work, and I said, I'm going off to do this volunteering. I will see you in 2 weeks' time. And when I got there, it was run a bit like a prison system in the sense that there was very strict rules. Like if people left a light switch on, they would be reprimanded and punished, and you could be standing in the yard as a punishment for a number of hours. So some of it was quite hard to witness. And also the clients that were there, because 85% of them came from the prison system, and a lot of the time they were in the prison system for years. Some of them had been there since they were 15 years old. Some of them in the US, if you're three strikes and then basically you're in prison. Like if you have a third strike, my understanding is that you're going to be in prison then forever. So it was really interesting to meet these people who were in prison because they were traumatized from something that had happened when they were younger. They were using drugs to run from that pain, and they had no choice but to get the drugs. They had to commit crime. So they were in this kind of catch-22 situation. So despite, they could have, I don't know, 20 or 100 tattoos, shaved heads, they could look very intimidating. Every time I went into a session, I just met these little boys and girls who were traumatized. And after a 2-hour session, at the beginning, you would see them shivering, heart palpitations. Sometimes they'd be sweating when I would produce my drug kit because they hadn't seen it in a while. And the excitement level would be huge. And after 2 hours, because we had processed the emotions and we had processed what that drug, what the foundational root cause of why they were addicted was in the first place, they could pick up the heroin needle or the spoon or the cocaine or whatever it was, and it didn't have that emotional charge anymore. They could have been picking up a tissue. It meant nothing. And it was
Wow.
so profound to see, like so incredible to witness that. I think, well, the lessons I learned, I think the big thing for me coming away from that is up until that point in my life, I had never met a prisoner. I hadn't met anybody who was in prison because it just hadn't occurred in my life. But I had met all of the people there. And, as I said, 85% of them had come from the prison system. And I had this kind of awakening of, oh my God, who is in prison, right? Like most people, from what I have experienced, are just traumatized individuals. And, it's not this situation that they're just all these bad people. It's the people that I met were just traumatized. And, some had, whether it was grief, loss, abuse, whatever it may be. Sometimes when it's trauma, we as adults simplify it and we go, oh, I had a great childhood. I don't think there's anything wrong with me. I just love drugs, right? But it's not, there's usually something else there. And it could be that you lost your favorite teddy bear when you were 4 or 5. But that teddy bear as a child is your best friend and has been your best friend for many years. And as an adult, we go, nothing major happened. But that could have been a pivotal moment in your life. Yeah, the lesson I think I learned from all of it was who actually is in the prison system. And maybe we need to do something different for those individuals so that they don't need to go back to their old behaviors. Because, like I said, these people were in and out of the prison system. And I remember meeting a guy, I was 37 at the time, and he was 37. And he had been in the prison system since he was like 14 years old.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He had his first kid at 11. I think he had 5 children. And
Whoa.
he had his first grandchild at 37. And I was on the journey of trying to get pregnant. And it was kind of like this real funny situation. Like, I haven't even started, and you have 5 kids. And he had a
He's at
couple
the
of
other end of the spectrum.
around the spectrum, but he'd been absent for so much of his family's life.
Yes, of course.
But it was magical to watch the transformation and just the addicted feeling like vanishing. That's not saying they didn't need more sessions, of course, but to be able to just focus on that thing and get rid of that addicted feeling is a huge thing, because if the driver has gone and you don't feel that desire, that's kind of half the battle. And then it's working on mentally what else is going on for you, and what else, what are the other reasons why you were using in the first place.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to explore this more. So, like, for our listeners who might not understand what EFT is, can you kind of break it down for us a little bit and go through what that actually entails? Because I have never actually heard of it being used in this way for addiction. So you're kind of blowing my mind a little bit here. So please break it down for us a little bit further.
Well, so emotional freedom technique, I'd heard about it many years ago from a friend, and she had described it to me as it's like tapping on meridian points. You stimulate them, and it's good for depression, anxiety, addiction, physical pain. And I thought, what a crock of shit. As if something that simple could do all of those things, why wouldn't everybody be doing it?
Why, yeah, absolutely.
But I think out of desperation, curiosity, I was a seeker. I felt broken and I wanted to fix me. So I went on a weekend workshop and I felt significantly lighter. And then I was like, oh, well, now I need to become a practitioner, with no intention of actually practicing on anyone else. I just thought clearly they would learn more than the average
Yes.
person. And if I know everything that I can about EFT, well, I'll definitely be able to fix me. But to become a practitioner, you have to actually practice on people. So what ended up happening was, as I was practicing on people, I would facilitate this experience where I describe it as I see the light going back on in people's eyes. It's like the cloud lifts and they just look so much lighter at the end of it. And it's a very beautiful thing to witness. But I, over the years, have worked on people with depression, anxiety, addiction, suicidal thoughts, physical pain from toothache, shoulder pain, knee pain. And I just watch magic happen because, as I say to my clients, we are all made up of energy. And if you can feel an emotion in your body like sadness, you actually created that feeling. Therefore, you can uncreate it, which is a very powerful thing to even realize. And the same too for pain. Pain is just emotion built up in the body. So if you can work on what's the emotional root cause of that pain, your pain will disappear. And I've seen that time and time again. And it sounds crazy, but I've worked on people who've had warts and seen warts fall out after a couple of days after a session.
What?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I've done
This is wild.
shoulder pain, toothaches have disappeared. Yeah. And then I've had, all ages from young people right through to, I had a lovely client who was in her 80s and suicidal. And we had a beautiful session. And her doctor said to her, "What have you just done?" Because I have never, in all the years that she had seen her, she had never seen her so light, and wondered what the change was. And she was like, "Oh,
Wow.
well, I just had this weird Irish girl tapping on me for 2 hours." But what I love about EFT is you can empower the individual. So I can teach you how to tap on yourself, and I can give you a tailored script, and you can then change your state of being at any time. So you don't have to
That's
sit in your shit
incredible.
anymore.
That's so, my goodness. Because I know we had a guest speaker on here, Coach Carly, who actually talked a little bit about EFT, but we definitely didn't go into depths about it. And I've been curious about it ever since. So, yeah, wow. I'm honestly like, my mind's just at the moment. All right, listen up, legends. If you're looking to experience the real Western Australia, there's no better way than with Why Not Bus, who is one of our sponsors. I've actually been on their tour, and let me tell you, it is awesome vibes, epic adventures, and I made lifelong friends. We're talking snorkeling with sea lions, manta rays, whale sharks, camping under the stars, and taking your time to enjoy the beauty of WA. Use my discount code PARIS2025 and get $300 off your next tour. Go to www.whynotbus.com.au. I want to know more. And I actually found that hilarious that your drive was to become a practitioner so you could learn more and get the most out of it.
Yeah, fix me, because I'm broken. I needed to be
Yeah.
fixed. So, yeah, and it was really powerful. I think when you do EFT, I've tapped on myself, but it's even more powerful when you get a practitioner involved, because
Yes.
they're going to say shit to you that you're not going to say to yourself. So,
True. Yeah.
and part of the process of EFT is sometimes saying stuff to a client to incite a response so that you can tap that response down. So sometimes I say stuff to people
Right.
that's not necessarily true, but it's not about whether it's true or not. It's to check if there's a response to that. So, yeah, my personal experience is if I'm stuck on something, I will call one of my practitioner friends and go, "Can you do a session on me?" Because they will say stuff to me that I won't say to myself, which is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of like something that someone could say to you during that
Oh,
session?
totally. So I think during my EFT journey, I had quite a few miscarriages, and I can't remember which one it was, but I had a miscarriage. And I remember having a session with, I think I actually did, I had two, I was very lucky. I had two colleagues who were close by. So they both did a session with me at the one time. So it was quite an interesting one. But they said to me, because the miscarriage was on the toilet, they were like, "I flushed my baby down the toilet." So
Mm.
when I heard that, I started crying, and all of this guilt, I had mum guilt, because through the process of IVF, which I think needs to be reviewed in Australia, and it may have changed in the last 7 years, but before I got pregnant and while I was going through the process, you would be getting a photograph of your embryo or your baby. So, depending on the clinic, they would refer it to as an embryo. Some people would be referring to as your baby. You would see at the moment that embryo would land in your uterus, and they might even be referring to you as mum. So, psychologically, it's a really messed up situation, because if I was
Mm.
going through a normal pregnancy, I may not even know I'm pregnant. And the first time I'm ever going to see a photograph of that child is at 12 weeks, when you have much more chance of it being a viable pregnancy. But I'm getting a picture of this embryo at 4 weeks, and the percentage chance of that actually sticking can be quite small. I think, I think the EFT process experience I had when I did the miscarriage, and these lovely practitioners were saying things like, I flushed my baby down the toilet and it's all my fault, which was part of the thing that I was feeling. I was like, clearly, I can't get pregnant naturally. Oh my God, now I can't even hold a pregnancy. There's something wrong with me. And by saying these things that I probably was saying unconsciously, it just allowed me to relieve so much more grief, all of this sadness. And I needed to get into a good headspace because I knew I was going back to do it again. So I knew I needed to psych myself up. So yeah, that's an example of things that you can say, I suppose. And I've had clients where, I'm trying to think of an example. I had a client who had a toothache, and because it was the right side of his body, and he had a lot of anger about this toothache because it'd been driving him mad for days. And because it's right side, that's male related. So I said, who is the guy in your life that you're really fucking angry with? And he had a friend who slept with his ex-girlfriend that he was not happy about. And I said,
that'll do it.
So we started tapping on that, and we were tapping on, the feeling of anger and how could he do this to me, and da-da-da-da-da. And I was talking to him as I was tapping about, if roles were reversed and you were out in a nightclub and some girl was coming on to you, would you say no? Would you really? And then also another technique that I used to snap him out of it, because on some level he has been spending a lot of time thinking about these two people having sex. He was deep in his anger, and I was tapping and I was like, you're spending so much time thinking about this guy having sex. Are you gay? And I did it as a provoking technique. It's not that I thought he was gay. It doesn't matter if he was or wasn't. But I did it. I knew it would incite a remote. He was totally shocked and like, what? And I was like, you're spending all of this time thinking about this guy and his penis. Like, oh my God. And it was quite a funny, and instantly all his anger started going because he was just like, oh God, why have I been thinking about this guy and his penis? Oh my God. And I said, shouldn't you really be thinking about you and your own penis? And, it's a real good way to mind fuck people, like into the positive, because ultimately what happens is we get stuck in a story in our head that usually isn't serving us in this present moment. And you just need to get people out of that loop and get them to see it from a different perspective. And it's like, oh God, why have I been doing that? Like, oh my God, of course, that doesn't make any sense at all. So,
oh my gosh,
as you can imagine, that particular person would never have said that to himself.
No. Oh my goodness.
It's not that there's any truth in that. It's just to try and
to provoke that feeling and shift that perspective.
Shift the perspective, get them to see it from another point of view, and then it has no power anymore. And
so you're alchemizing a lot of the feelings through EFT.
Yeah, and then the toothache went.
Yeah, so, wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I definitely want to look more into this, but before I go down another rabbit hole, let's go back to it sounds like you've been doing a bloody hell of a lot over your years of work. So can you tell me kind of what you've been doing like over your career and kind of what has shifted you now into what you're doing or what you're about to launch soon? Can you walk us through a little bit of that?
Yeah, so I have a background in digital marketing and I've worked for quite a lot of corporates and media agencies in Sydney. And I'm now up in the Sunshine Coast, so I did a lot of consulting. Back in 2005, I wrote a book on baby sign language because sign language was one of my passions. So if you've seen Meet the Fockers,
my gosh.
written a book on how to teach your child how to communicate using sign language while they're pre-verbal, and there's lots of benefits to that. And that's the poster behind me. Um,
Oh my God, baby hands. I can see it.
yeah. And then
Amazing.
more, I suppose, since about 2007, I trained as an EFT practitioner. So that started sliding in a bit more, and we're seeing clients. And then I took a break from corporate, started working at a retreat. Then I became a mum and was a full-time mum, and then went back into corporate. More recently, I worked at Dyson doing digital marketing. Then, yes, this opportunity came up last year, and it was like, okay, now's the time. Like I say, I just, through my own experience, I just want to create a safe space for people to come and heal and learn tools that they've not learned, because we don't really get taught things in school that will help with our emotional development or
Yes.
communication skills or how to navigate life resiliently. So, yeah, that's a little bit about my history and how I've come to here.
Thank you for sharing. So it sounds like the Hinterland Health Retreat is going to be quite an innovative space. So, can you tell us about these cutting edge technologies you were bragging about earlier? And, like, how you're using, I think it was ECG as well, that rebalances the brain, and the scans that you'll be doing. Like, walk us through a little bit about those technologies that you'll be using in this retreat.
Yeah, so the whole idea is to try and use technologies that will kind of relax the nervous system, stimulate your vagus nerve, which helps with depression, anxiety, energize your cells, calm your mind. Anything we can do to get you out of fight or flight, quieten your mind down so that you can actually do the work and process. I think a lot of people who are in trauma are in fight or flight, and their minds are very busy. So some
Hmm.
of the technology, we have an amazing meditation chair of sorts. And, 10 minutes in this chair is the equivalent to you meditating by yourself for a year. And
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. And they're using it with Ukrainian soldiers on the front line, as well as children traumatized by the Ukrainian war. I can only speak from my own personal experience. So I had 2 10-minute sessions on this chair, and I've never felt so still, quiet, peaceful, and relaxed. And I came back to a really busy time of setting up the retreat. Like, I went over to see the equipment, and then it was like, okay, game on, we're doing this. And despite that, and anxiety probably would have normally been, I would say, high, I felt so relaxed and calm throughout all of it. We also have another technology, which is a pod. So you lie on this, it spins 360 degrees for half an hour while you're lying on a PEMF mat, which energizes your cells. You're listening to binaural beats. You have a mask which has flashing lights, so a bit like EMDR.
Oh, yep.
We have something stimulating your earlobes for vagus nerve stimulation, which helps with depression and anxiety. And then you have frequencies going into your body. So it's doing lots of things at one thing. And again, just my own personal experience, I came out and I just felt really relaxed and still, and just a beautiful experience. We have a red light therapy device, but slight different with this one. It's specifically designed for the brain and for the gut, and with that mind body connection. So, again, really liked the idea of anything that can help us heal our gut while working on our mind is going to be beneficial for people. We also have this kind of brain balancing technology. So, what it does is, like in an addicted brain, your judgment center is generally smaller than your impulsivity center, which is usually a lot bigger. So, what it does is it will reduce the size of your impulsivity center and increase the size of your judgment. Therefore, you're less likely to relapse. So,
Wow.
that's just a kind of snapshot of some of the technologies. But like I say, I think that in coordination with all of your mind, body, spirit therapies, your food, your supplementation, connecting to nature, all of that combined just makes it just gives the person such an opportunity to become the best version of themselves and thrive
Does
when they go home.
This just sounds insane. Like, I'm just sitting here like, wow, this is so cool. And so is this technology as well that you've brought over from America, is there anywhere else in Australia that is using these technologies, or are you literally the first?
Yeah, so there's nowhere using this combination of technologies. So one of the technologies that we're using, people in Australia have this technology. It's like a TMS machine,
Oh,
but
yes. Yeah, I know the
we,
one.
we are using a very specific protocol. So we'll be using the product off label. So it's and this particular lady who's using it in the US is having about an 85% success rate of people not relapsing as a result. So
Wow.
that's the one machine that other people probably are using in Australia, but we're going to be using it quite differently. All the other
Yeah.
machines are not available here at the moment. And then this combination, not available anywhere in the world.
Oh my goodness. This is just so exciting. I can't wait till you guys launch. I'm going to be absolutely shouting it out from the rooftop. Like, get over there, get to the Hinterland Health Retreat, sort your shit out. You'll feel $1,000,000 afterwards.
Yes, it'll be really exciting. And I think, like I said, there's only 6 at a time, so we can really
Yeah,
focus. I've worked at retreats where there can be a lot more people, and it's easy to hide then. Like,
of
you're
course.
the large
Yes.
group. And, if you're going to be spending money, I think spend money that you don't have to come back, that you
Yeah.
can really make a big shift in your life and you will feel the difference.
And I love that that's your, business's core mission really is to ensure that people aren't coming back. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, that's not I can't say there's many businesses that have that
I
have
love
that
people,
mission.
but I don't want to see them again in a lovely way. I just think that should be the ethos um, when you're in this field. It should be about empowering the individual to be the best version of themselves. And that
Agreed.
was my ethos when
Agreed.
I did EFT. Like when I saw clients one on one, my company was called Your Inner Power, and it was connecting people to their inner power so that I didn't have to see them again.
Yeah, that's amazing. So good. I mean, it's like you can give someone like, the results and be like, and they only have it for that day. Or you can teach them how to be able to provide it for themselves. And then, they've got that for life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. That's my philosophy. Whatever that quote is. Now you mentioned as well that you'll have like an on-site IV clinic, so that's quite unique as well in itself. So, what role will that play into all these technologies as well? I know we briefly touched on it, but what else will you be doing in that space?
Yeah, so it's just really understanding if there's any deficiencies, or is there any way that we can really boost these people's immune systems. There's a chance they've probably not been eating very well. They may have been neglecting themselves nutritionally, and so there may be some deficiencies. And it could be a case. They may be lacking in vitamin B12, which is having an effect on their mood. So yes, they may be suffering from depression, but oh my God, if we can just boost we could be doing vitamin B12 injections, we could be doing IV supplementation as IV drips as well as supplements. So it's really working. The nurse and the doctor will be working together to understand what IVs they'll need weekly, or do they need more than once a week? What supplements do they need to be on, if they need to be on any? And is there any, like, would you do like a B12, for example, injection? So just really making sure that we're giving their body all the support that we possibly can to get it back to the healthiest version of themselves in that 28 days.
Yeah. So when people first come in, well, that will be like one of the first things that they'll do. They'll get all their blood work done and have this all looked at, and then you'll kind of tailor everything to them for the next 28 days.
Yeah, so they'll get their blood work done before they come to us, ideally. So
Okay.
we'll have
Yeah.
their bloods done. We will have stool samples done. We will do genetic testing as well, so that we will have all of those results by the time they arrive. So then we can find out, from their stool sample, is there any parasites that we need to be dealing with? From their blood work, is there any deficiencies? Is there anything going on we need to be aware of?
Yeah.
And genetically, is there anything we need to know that ultimately will help us to get to where we want to be.
That's incredible. That's so cool. I love that. I think it's just so, yeah, this is just exactly what we've really needed. Like, we've really needed, this has been such a gap. And I love everything you're doing, Jackie. I think it's fucking
Oh,
awesome.
thank you. Thank you.
I particularly love that you're really incorporating the physical health and your DNA into it as well. Because I can't say that there's many places that do that. I mean, there's naturopaths, but like they're not looking at your mental health and things like that either. It's like, to have everything all in one place, it's just, yeah, mind blowing.
Exciting.
It is exciting though. It is exciting. And I love to see that you've kind of come to this place to put this together because of your own journey and what you've been going through and how you've been wanting to become the best version of yourself. So you've been exploring like all these technologies and alternative pathways to healing, and it's really cool to see that now that you've done all of this exploring and experimenting, you've come to this place and you're able to now incorporate everything that you've learnt into this one space. So I know you mentioned as well briefly that a lot of it had stemmed from your own like childhood trauma. And I know that we've spoken previously about how you haven't really voiced this. Like, it hasn't been a public thing that you've really talked about ever really before. Can you walk us through a little bit on, what you did experience and what it's been like to carry that over the years?
Yeah, so I was sexually abused when I was younger. I think I was around 5 years old, not sure. And I know I have suppressed memories. I have a couple of specific memories, but I definitely know more has happened to me than I can recall. What that has meant for me, I suppose for many years, I kind of simplified it and dismissed it. And, it's done, it's over, I'm okay. But I think what that meant for me now, like when I look back in hindsight, it's like I ultimately never felt safe. Um, I was probably on high alert. I was sending out a vibration to the universe to send me situations that triggered helpless, hopeless, out of control, which is what my little girl felt when she was being abused. I would sometimes not lose my voice, but I would be in shock at what situations were coming up. I found that I didn't really know how to behave with men. I didn't probably feel safe with them, and they would sometimes be inappropriate with me. But that was because of the vibration I was sending out, if that makes sense. So it wasn't until I actually started working on me and changing the way I felt and processing the trauma that now, thankfully, I'm not attracting inappropriate men into my life, which is always very
Good, good.
beneficial. Um, and, I just felt I didn't realize, I dismissed it for so many years. And then getting into a relationship, of course, that would be started triggering it. Climbing the corporate ladder, I was being triggered by some of my male colleagues. And again, it was just more that they were being a bit inappropriate. I think because I didn't have the emotional tools, I didn't know how to navigate that. And, if I didn't have the abuse in my past, it probably wouldn't have been that big a deal. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it was just very emotional. And I was one of these people, when I would drink, if I had too much to drink, I would be the sad drunk because I had so much sadness in my body and
Of
so much.
course.
It also manifested in me finding it very difficult to get pregnant and stay pregnant. But that also makes total sense to me because I had spent so many years not being in my body. And I think it wasn't until I met my husband that I realized how connected he was to his body. So like he could say like, oh, I have a pain in my arm, and he could tell you exactly where it was in his arm. Whereas I could never, it sounds bizarre, but I couldn't do that because I wasn't in my body, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Couldn't associate where exactly the pain was. It became more apparent that I needed to get into my body. And I needed to feel safe in my body. I needed to also eradicate belief systems that, because I was abused, I would become an abuser, which was something that I'd heard when I was quite young, which frightened the shit out of me because I thought, I don't ever want to be that person and I don't
Mm.
ever want to become the monster. And even though I knew at my core that would never happen, some part of me was still petrified of that. So I feel like on some level I sabotaged getting pregnant. So that in itself was an interesting journey. And I think even becoming a woman, so, having your period, I was the very last person in my class to get my period because it wasn't safe to become a woman or to be a woman as far as I was concerned.
Mm.
And I went into early menopause after I gave birth. So I was in my early 40s when I went into menopause. So it was like, this is part of me that was like, let's get through that part as quickly as you possibly can because it's not safe. So even in the last number of years, I think since the birth of my son, I do feel like I'm in a safer place. Not physical, like I've been in a safe space, like in my relationship, but I think there were so many elements to safety and feeling emotional safety and truly letting your little girl feel safe is the big thing, right? Once she feels
Yes.
you're fine. So yeah, I think that it's been navigating all those ways that the abuse has affected you that you'd never even think about. And I think even just talking to a friend this week, it's like, oh, I never realized why I did like behaved that way, or it was just so core to my being. Or I remember my mum. There was one day we were all going out on a family trip, and my mum decided she was going to stay behind. And I was so excited about this trip, but I heard she was staying home alone. And I decided that I didn't want her to stay at home. And I started crying and I was saying to mom, please come, please come. And I didn't end up going on the trip and I was devastated because I didn't want mum to be alone. But what it was for me was it's not safe to be alone because bad shit happens
Mm.
when you're alone. So I think it's understanding unconsciously like what way are you behaving that's not helpful to you because of there's a little girl in this at the steering wheel and is driving your life ultimately.
Yeah. And that's all a part of, really starting to identify those core beliefs that you've developed over the years and unlearning those. And as you mentioned, creating those new neuro pathways and unlearning the old that no longer serve us. Like it's so hard to do it because we do so many things subconsciously that we just don't
Oh,
even realize are happening.
yeah, totally. It's like somebody's just hit play, right? Most of the time, and you're just in reactive mode.
Yeah, absolutely. And it took me a really long time. Like, I'm still unlearning a lot of my shit. Like, there's things constantly popping up where I'm like, well, I should probably look at this.
Well, I think
But
that's the thing.
it's,
We think we're a work in progress, right? Like
yes,
I say 95% of my triggers I feel are gone, but for me, I say 5% because I still have repressed memories. So will they ever come to the surface? I don't know. And am I ever meant to know? I don't know. And that's
yes.
okay. But I don't claim to be, healed as such. Like I feel like I'm the best version of myself right now, but I always want to be working on myself because you're constantly learning and growing and evolving and having new experiences. So I feel like we're always a work in progress.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I think, if you've got to a point where you've convinced yourself you no longer need any healing, I mean, you've just really limited yourself there. Like, you're not going to go any further.
Yeah.
I think that's so damaging for personal development and to be able to where you can kind of expand yourself to as well. Like we're so limitless, and set a limit on yourself like that. Yeah, it only causes you harm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. For listeners who might be interested in participating in the retreat when it launches, where is the best place for people to like contact you, or how can they best get engaged?
So they can visit the website, which is www.hinterlandhealthretreat.com. But if you go on the website, you can join. There's a wait list. If you fill in those questions, I will give you a call and I can chat through everything you need to know and go from there.
Amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on, Jackie. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I can't wait till this kicks off. This is going to be so exciting.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome.
It's all right. It's my pleasure. All right. Well, I'll speak to you soon anyway.
Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.